the presentation slide as well as the recording will be shared with your respective Moodle communities. So we will upload all the resources after the workshop, usually after a day or two. Another ground rules, please note that your mics will be enabled shortly so that you can be able to unmute yourself when you do have a question for Dr. Gabriel. However, you can also use a chat box to type in your question if you do have one, or use a raise a hand button to raise your hand. Therefore, either me or Dr. Gabriel will note you and then will allow you to ask your question. Without any further ado, let me introduce Dr. Gabriel to you. Dr. Gabriel is a postdoctoral research fellow at the School of Public Management, Governance and Public Policy of the University of Johannesburg. Through the application of quantitative and qualitative methods, his research interest focuses on trade policy, export promotion, foreign direct investment, globalization, and regional integration in Africa. Since 2022, Dr. Gabriel has also been working as an on-site academic research writing consultant at the postgraduate school of the University of Johannesburg, where he engages with consultants from across all eight university faculties. Without any further waste of time, Dr. Gabriel, you can proceed with the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ngos, for the introduction. And I also would like to take this opportunity to just welcome you, and also to thank you for being my audience for today. As Nkosi has already introduced, I'm Dr. Gabriel Monyera. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the College of Business and Economics, specifically the Department of Public Management, Governance and Public Policy. So I'll be presenting to you, facilitating this the workshop for today with the theme overview of research proposal. So specifically, this is what I'll be looking at. Let me I had to rephrase it a bit and just call it tips and guidelines. Writing a proposal, tips and guidelines. So this is the outline of the presentation. I will start by looking, at what is it that we call a proposal. Why does it matter? So the aim is to just give a bit of an understanding to what a proposal is and what it entails. Before I continue, can you just show me a signal that you can hear me well and you can see the slides that I have shared with you?
Yes, Dr. Gabriel, we can see your slide and
Okay.
we can hear you clearly.
All right, thank you, Ngos. So from the understanding a proposal, I'll move on to the reading process. Remember, writing, it's not an event, it's a process. And also, this also applies to proposal. There's a process of reading that you have to undergo before you start the process of writing a proposal. So I will move on to proposal structure. What is it that you also do after you've finished with your writing? So that is a bit of facets that relates to the editing of your work, the technical presentation of your work, and other things that pertains to the technical look of your proposal. Then just offer a bit of conclusions and recommendations before I open the floor for questions and contributions. But like Nkosi said, as we progress, if you feel that you are burning, you have a question that you want to ask and you cannot ask at the end, you can raise your virtual hand, then we will unmute you and give you the platform to ask your question. Okay, so what is it that we call proposals? I think we have all seen that when you start this process of the postgraduate journey from masters to doctoral level, usually you are asked to write a proposal, and this also begins even when you're doing honors, because when you're doing honors, you are introduced to this research writing. To research writing, being prepared for master's level. And you are also asked to go through this process of writing a proposal, then you do a mini dissertation kind of. Okay, but, so what is it that we call a proposal? So I just, went in the Oxford Dictionary to seek, an understanding of what this means from an English perspective. So the definition, and I read, was a proposal. It's a plan or suggestion, especially a formal or written one, put forward for consideration by others. Okay, so a plan or suggestion, especially a formal or written one, put forward for consideration by others. Then another definition, there were two definitions. The other one was saying an offer of marriage. An offer of marriage. So I think for those who are married, maybe some of you are already married, some might be dating and so on. But you don't just marry someone. You have to propose to that person, and a proposal can be accepted and can be rejected. So is an academic proposal as well. It can be accepted, it can be rejected. So, like I said, you may be asked to write a proposal. And in the proposal, its purpose is to provide a snapshot of what your research involves. So we want to see whether does it work or it doesn't work. And in most cases, this is also the time where if it can work, then it can also be, given a sort of a new face. It can be there are additions and contributions that can be made towards that, so that your proposal is further refined. So usually after submission of the proposal, you will be assigned a supervisor who has some expertise in your field of study. But this can differ. This is just more of a generic form, but this can differ because sometimes you identify a supervisor even before you submit the proposal. I think I've seen quite a number of people who have done that, including myself. I've done that as well before. But in most cases, this is the usual process. You submit your proposal, then you'll be assigned a supervisor who has expertise in that particular field or on the topic that you want to consider to study on. Okay, then after that, you should receive a feedback on the viability of the topic, how to focus, the scope, research methods, and other issues that you should consider before progressing in your research. So that is mostly the paper, what is done by the, usually there's a faculty research committee that looks at these proposals and so on. Then this is the aim. They provide feedback to you on the viability of that topic. Does it work or doesn't work? Like I said, a proposal can be accepted. It can also be rejected. But in most cases, we have seen these, proposals being more of further modified in some one way or the other, so that it can work. So the research proposal, it should present the research topic, justify your reasons for choosing it, and outline how you are going to research it. So in most cases, I've seen quite a number of departments, including the CPE as well, because under in the School of Public Management, Governance and Public Policy, there is a template that they use. I understand other schools also have their own specific templates that they use for the writing of proposal. So you have to present your proposal on that particular template, that you have a set of guidelines, including the structure of that particular proposal. Okay, so like I said, writing is a process and not an event. So it entails a lot of reading, it entails a lot of reading before you start writing something. So before writing your proposal, you need to read a lot of relevant information that is relevant to the topic that you are considering to study. So you have to be targeted and more focused on what you really need to know. So it doesn't mean that when you are supposed to read, then you are going to read everything in the field or everything about that particular topic, but you have a focus. So you have to stick to the focus of what you are really looking for and what you need to know. So for example, instead of reading every page in every book or every journal article, you can look for clues in chapter titles and introductions to narrow your focus down. So apparently this issue of how do you look for resources, it's actually a presentation on its own, where you, when you are looking for, but I can just give you sort of some tips and pointers on how you can be able to tell whether this is applicable to what you want to do or not, and the process that you undertake when you are looking at such. Okay, so you don't have to read everything. You don't have to read all the whole article for you to determine whether is it relevant or it's not relevant. So what you can do is that you can use titles, you can use the introduction as well, to see whether there are certain keywords within your topic that you will be looking for, and the presence of those keywords in the titles, in the introduction, for example, can be a signal of the relevance of that particular article or source to your study. So you can use abstracts and conclusions from journal articles to check relevance. You, for example, if it's a journal article, if you read the title and you see that the title doesn't speak to your topic, then you have to leave it. Or you read the title, you see that, but the title speaks to what you want to do. You can read the abstract. Usually read the title and the abstract together. Why? Because sometimes some people are not very good at devising titles that are, more of tailored for search engine optimization. When I say talk about search engine optimization, I mean that, remember on Google, when I'm searching on Google Scholar, I search for a particular topic using keywords. I'm going to get millions of articles will pop up. You understand? But there's the first one, second one, third one, the first page, second page. Usually we don't go to the 1 million article. We don't go there. So it's now, if your title is tailored for search engine optimization, when you were coming up with your title, if you have considered that, it means that your article will appear within the first page, second page. You see, so it's within the reach of your targeted audience. So those ones that come there, they're the ones that you check. If you check the title, then if you see that the title is, I think it's speaking to what you want, you can now check the abstract. If you feel that the abstract, of course, both the title and the abstract speaks to the topic, then you can further go on to read the introduction. And you read the introduction together with the conclusion. Then you can decide whether for you to read further the whole article or not. Understand? So then also you have to keep notes of your reading along with clear records of bibliographic information and page numbers for your references. So usually we just look for information, but then we do not keep any bibliographic information pertaining to that. Then when you have used it within your proposal, you have a problem of now having to go and look for it again for you to be able to cite that particular source and provide a reference, a bibliographic entry for that particular source. So you have to avoid that. And how do you do that? You keep clear records of the bibliographic information, including the page numbers, for the purposes of references. But also remember, the university itself, you have other, sort of referencing tools that are there, like the EndNote, the library. I think you can visit the library for more information on that and training on how you can use EndNote. Even those who are used to Microsoft Office as well, you can also create your own database of sources as well and cite automatically as you progress with your writing. Okay, then still on the before writing a proposal, the ultimate objective should be to create a dialogue between the theories and ideas we have read and your own thoughts. Okay, so that is the ultimate entry. So when you are reading, looking for information, don't build a library, but look for the information that you need to use for that for the specific proposal that you are writing. And also the aim is for you to, it should be a dialogue between the theories that you have read, the ideas that you have read, and your own thoughts. Why? Your own thoughts, I usually call it value addition. Why? It's because of, okay, that's why, where you hear that there's the author's voice. You understand? But when you are looking at, there are certain sections where your voice shouldn't be the one now dominating. Like, for example, when you're writing a literature review, then you end up you are now writing your own thoughts. Then, of course, they are not published. In a way, that's not literature. You understand? So we need, if it's a literature review, it should be a conversation of existing publications, but whilst you're also adding your own voice. Remember, you are the one who is, sort of a judge to see, maybe, looking at certain trends, orientations, divergencies, agreements, and so on. That's the purpose of a literature review. That's where you add value now. They are now looking at certain discrepancies, the orientation that the literature is taking, the direction that the literature is taking, what trends are there within that particular topic or the field. You understand? So then at the end, you identify a gap that you have to fill. So that is the essence of the whole essence of doing a literature review. It's not just about telling us that so and so wrote about this and found this, so and so wrote about this in China and found that, so and so also did the same study in South Africa and find that. So what? You understand? Ask yourself, so what? What is it that you are adding to that particular conversation yourself? Okay. Then you should ask yourself the following: what is your personal perspective on the topic? What evidence is there that supports your point of view? Is each text current or is it outdated? What argument is the author making? Is the author biased? So these questions also, we have to look at them, and they have to be also explicit within your text. Okay, so remember, academic writing is formal. And by formal, we mean that we do not just make claims or arguments that are not supported or backed by the evidence that is drawn from sources that are credible. So when you talk of sources that are credible, we are talking of, in a scholarly realm, we talk about those published articles in peer-reviewed journals. Understand? Remember, there's a lot of publications. You also have to check on the quality of those publications. Who have published that? Who is saying that? Is it credible? You have to ask yourself those questions. You cannot just support your claims. You cannot just support your arguments by anything that is published. That's why sometimes they say do not seek for information from sites like, maybe, for example, Wikipedia, for example. Okay, it's .org. But there are other organizations like United Nations, IMF, and so on, that are credible. But this one of Wikipedia, why is it not credible? It's simply because the articles that are there, they are not peer-reviewed. It's just like things that are written in newspaper articles, but sometimes also in you just take information because you saw it on Facebook. You understand? Those are not academic sources. Why? Because the information there, it can be correct sometimes, but it's not verified. You understand? So the person who is reviewing your work, or the reader of your work, should not question the credibility of your sources. So that is also something that can be looked at, and that you can also further look at on your own in terms of credibility of sources. How do you ensure that sources are credible and so on? Then also you have to approach your reading. If you approach your reading in this way, it will ensure that you engage with the literature critically. So always engage with the literature from a critical perspective. Look for, like I said, trends, divergences, and any other related information that you can be able to use to identify the orientation that the literature is taking, the direction, whether there are agreements, there are disagreements, and those all relevant information that can enable you to identify a particular gap that you start with it. We don't research because we just want to research. Remember, research is a monetary element, it has a time element, all those factors. All those factors have to be considered. So whatever that you do, that's why we do not want to replicate the research that has already been there. So it should be occupying a particular gap, contributing to existing knowledge, especially the contribution is an issue, a very important issue, especially when you are doing PhD. You have to contribute to literature, you have to contribute to theory. You understand? Okay, so now let's look at the structure of the proposal. So this is more of a generic form, but I think in some cases you might get, depending on the department that they are coming from, they do have their own templates that you are supposed to follow, which also give a bit of guidelines. So these are also some of the tips and the guidelines that I'm going to give you here, from title until the research outline, or also until the research plan, because in some departments you can also be asked to include your research plan within the proposal itself. Okay, so the title that you have devised, when we say title, we mean the title that you have already devised so far. Some of you might be having, remember, when you start writing something, conceptualizing a topic, you usually have a working title. It can change throughout the research writing process. You can see that maybe what the title that you started with is not the same title that you are having. Sometimes even the topic itself can even change. Remember, like I said, the proposal, it might do, what you are proposing might work or it might not work. So after it has been reviewed, there might be a need of a change of the orientation that you are taking, or a change of perspective that you are taking, or a change of the total topic itself. You understand? So the title can change throughout the research writing process. But I think at a particular stage, you have to register your title. Then usually it won't change after such a time, but depending maybe from one university to another. The case of UJ, of which I do not know how they handle the registration of titles, whether you can change it after or not. The qualities of a good title: the title must link to the content of the proposal. Use of relevant word topics is also recommended. The title can be funky. For example, that's an example. Does size matter in analysis of tourism development? Title could also be in question format if you decide to do so. What is the impact of inflation on economic growth, for example? So that you can, but mostly it should be descriptive. It should describe what you are doing, and it's dictated by the topic that you are looking at. So what should be in your title? It should also be the keywords that are within your text. So that's the search engine optimization that I was talking about. So is the title and the keywords that, as well as the abstract, your keywords also being in the abstract itself, that enables your final output to be identifiable after it is published. You see, so for you to reach your audience, it shouldn't be the number 1 million article on Google or Scholar. No, because I'm not going to go to 1 million. I'm going to just look maybe at first 2-3 pages, then I leave. You see, so these are some of the qualities that should be within your title for us to label it as a good title. Then the introduction, from the title, we move on to the introduction or background. So here, you are simply providing sort of a background and context to the topic and presenting the key issues of your proposed research. So there are certain things that also should be part of that. So I think the template that you are normally given, from your department, it should speak to that. But this is what you do within the introduction or background or context section. You give background to the start from a broad perspective, usually to a narrow research question. Remember, the field is big. So myself, I usually like to take more of a sort of I call it a historical approach, kind of, where I look at the phenomenon, then I look at the development of that over time. Once I'm coming, remember you have questions that you want to ask. So whatever that you background information that they're giving me, the context that they're giving me, you are starting broader, but you are narrowing it down to those questions that you want to ask for that particular research. You cannot do everything, within that particular topic. So, but there's something that you might be looking at. If you are just focusing on exports, then take it to exports. You understand? But exports, remember, this is part of international trade. International trade is a branch of economics. Economics itself, there's micro, macro. So you approach it in a way that you can. You have a story to tell. Remember, you have a story to tell, and it's you who have to tell that story in a manner that is convincing, to the reader of your work. Why should the reader even take time to read your work? You must ask yourself that question. So it should be convincing. So give. Like I said, give background to the study from a broad perspective to a narrow search question. The main message must be clear and concise. It must be clear. So the issues of logic, of flow, coherence of your work, remember, your idea should be linked. Whatever that you write within the sections themselves, they should be linked. There should be a relationship, a flow from one aspect to another aspect. You understand? If it's sections, there should be a link. There should be a relationship between those sections. If you cannot link the sections, then it means also the flow of your work at the end of the day is going to be compromised. So the issue of coherence of your text or logical flow of your text, I usually use an example of a skeleton. That's the structure. Remember, the structure of a human is the skeleton, or any other kinds of animals that have bones and so on. There's a skeleton. The skeleton gives the structure. If the skeleton is not arranged in the manner that it should be arranged for a human, then you are not going to appear this way that you're supposed to appear. Remember, the text, it's flesh that you put on the skeleton. Then we can see that, okay, this is a person, sometimes we even label beautiful, ugly, what, or those other takes that we put on people. But the skeleton, that is the structure that we are talking about. You don't start by concluding, you start by introducing. Then from introduction, you move. Let's say this is at the end for your mini dissertation, for example, or for your dissertation or thesis, generic form, introduction, literature review, research method, results, discussion, conclusion, and recommendations. That's generic form. So already you've arranged. You don't start by concluding and recommending before you even introduce. You understand? Okay, so there's a structure that you have to follow. There's a sequence, a logical sequence that you have to follow. So that is what ensures that your work is coherent or is flowing well in terms of logic. So the readers should also understand and be contextualized in the research and know which broad research field the study fits in. So they always say that a good start is one that when you are giving background, a good background, it should also be understandable by a novice or by someone who is just maybe even not within your field. Because if your proposal is only for those who are within your field or just your colleagues, it's containing a lot of technical jargons and so on. It's not understandable, to a layman or to any other person, any other reader who might have interest within that particular topic. Then you can consider that maybe it's not really a very good background. So it should be understandable. If the first person to be able to judge your work is yourself, let me also just address that. It's you, because you write. When you write, you're editing your work, you're reading it as well. You're seeing whether it's making sense or it doesn't make sense. So all those aspects, it's you who have to do them as the writer. You're the first reader. So you assume a role of a reader and a role of an author as well of that particular text. So the reader must have a clear idea of what is being studied. The relevance, importance, and purpose of the research must be apparent, including the contribution. What is it that is new that they are bringing to knowledge? Remember, knowledge is perpetual, so we don't want you to do something that has already been done. You understand? In other words, we are just wasting resources, because if it's there, then why do we have to do it again? You see, so you don't have to just duplicate a study that has already been there or something that has already been researched on. So when we research, there's a problem that exists within the society. You want to provide a solution to that particular problem. So you identify the problem, you provide solutions to the problem. But so it shouldn't be a problem that someone has already identified and provided a solution to. So there must be something. There must be value that you are adding. There must be a contribution that you are making to existing knowledge, and remembering that knowledge is perpetual. Okay, the problem statement. So from the introduction, you move on to the problem statement. It's a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved, a difficulty to be eliminated, or a troubling question that exists in scholarly literature, in theory, or in practice, that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. So I think I like this definition. It seems like it captures everything to what a problem, the problem statement pertains to, and also introduce you to the contents or the elements that should be within that problem statement. So usually a problem statement, it shouldn't be long. You clearly should be able to articulate what is the problem, what solutions are you proposing that problem can be resolved. So usually 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs, but it should be as brief as possible. We don't want pages and pages. You have 3 pages of problem statement. No, you should be able to articulate a problem in a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, you see, at most. The purpose of the problem statement to introduce the reader to the importance of the topic being studied. I've talked about other factors and the financial implications of your research, time implications of your research, and so on. And remember, in economics, everything has a monetary value. It could be in form of opportunity cost or real monetary value. Okay, so there is a cost to everything. Okay, so like I said, the purpose is to introduce the reader to the importance of the topic being studied, places the problem into a particular context that defines the parameters of what is to be investigated. Remember, like I said, you cannot do everything. You cannot start everything. But there are certain aspects of a particular topic or a particular field that you are looking at. Okay, so it should also provide the framework for reporting the results and indicates what is probably necessary to conduct the study and explain how the findings will present this information. Understand? Okay, so that is also another important aspect or element of a problem statement. Still, for qualitative study, you have to pose what is called the research problem, or we also call it a guiding research question. So you have to pose that. It's the research problem or guiding research question for those who have done qualitative or who are doing studies that are any qualitative for. For quantitative study, it usually state a hypothesis. Usually state a hypothesis where you look at the nature of a relationship of maybe particular variables. So you are hypothesizing, to say, okay, this is what you think maybe could be the relationship or could be the outcome. You understand? Then usually hypotheses are informed by theory. Then you are able to test or to prove that the hypothesis is wrong or right. You either accept the hypothesis or you reject the hypothesis. Okay, so the research question or hypothesis must make sense in the context of the presentation of the background and rationale of the problem statement. It must explain the problem, the extent of the problem, and possible solutions to it. So under the problem statement as well, it's important that you explain it. You also have to establish the extent of the problem and the possible solutions to that particular problem. Remember, all this is being done with evidence to support that. You don't just state a problem and say there's a problem. Economic growth, in South Africa is declining or it's stagnant, but then you don't provide evidence to show that it's stagnant. So the evidence could be in form of statistics from credible sources, or it can be in form of citations, like you are citing relevant literature supporting the claims that you are making or the arguments that you are making. or that are substantiating that this problem it actually exists. Then the theoretical foundation and literature review. So those ones, the two, they are usually just combined. So you explain the theoretical perspective or framework and foundation of the study. So remember, we are from natural sciences and from social sciences. We differ from those in natural sciences. The natural sciences, they have their own way that they structure, and they are not usually expected that they must state a hypothesis. So you might find that their studies, they just jump from introduction, then they go to materials and methods, then they move. But from social sciences, we are usually expected to provide a theoretical underpinning of your study or a theoretical foundation of your study. So you have to explain the theoretical perspective, the framework and foundation of the study. Remember, we don't just come up with ideas. There's usually some kind of we have some theories that are guiding those ideas. We have some paradigms that we are following, some world views that we follow, or some philosophy that are underpinning the ideas that we are having. And usually this is where you devise your hypothesis from. Then you can test it or wrong. You can either accept it or reject it in proving the theory wrong or right. Okay, so further expand research goals and demonstrate knowledge of recent and prior authoritative literature locally and internationally. That's in the literature review. I think I've already spoken much about literature review and told you that the literature review itself, it shouldn't just be an exercise where you are building a library or where you are not. It should be an exercise that has value addition at the end, where you are identifying a gap in literature. Where you end your literature review, there, a gap should be apparent that this is what has been done and this is what has not been done. And me, I'm going to do this. You see, theory X, there's theory X, there's theory Y, but I think both theories are lacking. So I'm proposing a new theory that speaks to 1, 2, 3, 4. You understand? So that is what usually is needed to see. Or existing literature has looked at this aspect, but they have neglected this other side. So I'm going to look at this side. You understand? That kind of. So that is the kind of language that is needed in the literature review itself. So they should also you should demonstrate proficiency and ability to give an adequate report of preliminary research. So which means the other research that have been done, before. Remember, it's not only you who is starting to propose something on a particular topic. There are others who have already maybe written about it. So that's the purpose of literature review, for you also to demonstrate that you know what is going on within the field itself. Okay, literature study should include definitions of concepts, the theoretical foundation, and empirical results from other studies. What have others found? So remember, at the end, your results will also speak back to the literature as well. Your hypothesis that you are now testing, you are now proving the theory is wrong or right. Then the empirical literature that you have been writing, you are now triangulating what you have achieved or what the outcomes of your study or the findings of your study with the findings also that are there within studies that have already been done or within existing literature. So this is it should cover the literature review should also cover the main aspects or themes of the study. So that is also something that is important. That remember, what you write in your literature review is usually dictated by the keywords within the title of your study or in your topic. Understand? That is what is checked. Is your literature relevant? We check the relevance of what you have written. Is it related to the topic that you are studying? Okay, then the theoretical foundation, and still under theoretical foundation in literature review. So these are just some important tips. Establish the research intellectual context related to your topic. for example, theory, conceptual or theoretical framework. Trace the history of the development of your topic, the background to present thinking. I think I already touched about that. Indicate the latest research or thinking and developments in your topic. For example, current issues studied and current practices. Discuss conflicting arguments and detect gaps in present knowledge. Check that the essential issues of your research problem are introduced through the analysis of the literature. So I think these tips, they capture everything that you are supposed to do within the theoretical foundation and literature review section. Okay, then the research questions and objectives. Research questions and objectives. So the research questions, so these are the questions that you are asking. Remember, you ask particular questions. These are questions that you are going to answer. You have objectives that you want to reach. So usually research questions and objectives, they just speak to each other. You know, you derive objectives from the research questions that you have posed. Okay, so but we usually have what we call a main or overarching question that you seek to answer, or that your research seeks to answer. So that is the main question, research question. Then you can also have other secondary research questions. So usually some can say primary research question, secondary research question. Then when or main research question, then you have other research questions that they are also asking. So the main is the one that speaks to your topic, what you really want to do. But in doing that, there are other questions that you cannot avoid to ask. You understand? So that becomes secondary. That is not the purpose of the study. But in asking this main question, I also end up asking these questions as well. Okay, the same relates to the objectives as well. This is not the main objective or the main purpose of the study. But in achieving these objectives, I end up also achieving this. So these are like byproducts. When you are producing fresh milk, you end up with cheese, for example. But the aim was not to produce cheese. The aim was to produce fresh milk. Yeah, so these are like byproducts, sort of. For you to arrive to a certain destination, you end up passing through other destinations. But your purpose was not to go to those destinations. You have a final destination where you are going to. So that is the sort of just a layman explanation of the research questions, primary and secondary research questions, or primary, secondary research objectives. Some they will say when we say the main, that's the primary. Some they will say the purpose of the study. You understand? Then they have objectives after that. Okay. So the main or overarching question that your research seeks to answer, it is optimal how many research questions or subsequent study objectives you choose for your study. So I don't, because some place limitations on that, but you can have, you can answer. I think that it's for you now to also decide, because remember, this also involves the scope of your study as well. You cannot answer all the questions within that particular topic. So it's you who have to decide maybe how many questions I'm asking. But I've heard other people say that maybe you must have 3 questions, or they are told in the department that they must have this number of questions. But I actually think that it's for you to decide also, depending on the depth or the scope of the focus of your study, to determine how many at least you should have the main research question, and you can have maybe 3, 4 other questions that you are also asking. But that, like I said, it's you who have to determine, and that is, you do that with your maybe your supervisor, or as recommended by other experts within your department, or the faculty committee that looks at your proposal. Okay, so quantitative studies can use hypotheses in alternative to research questions. So you can, instead of asking a question, you can pose a hypothesis. Or like I said, you can divide research questions into primary, overall, or secondary research questions. Then the objectives usually we just define them as stepping stones to achieve your aim, to achieve the main aim of the study. So we normally have primary, ensure that the primary objective links to the title of your study. The primary objective is one. Usually we don't have primary objectives. So it's just one that speaks the overall thing that you want to do. So usually linked to the title of your study, usually also linked to the topic, because your title links to the topic. Then we have what are called also theoretical objectives. Objectives that you want to achieve via the literature review process as well. Because remember, reviewing literature is an objective as well. You can add that as an objective of study, because you want to identify the current trends in knowledge and other aspects that relates to existing knowledge. Then we have empirical objectives that you want to achieve via the data or statistical review. So like I said, you normally derive your objectives from the research questions. Okay, so let's say maybe the research question is saying, what is the impact of inflation on economic growth? So you can say maybe the objective can be examining the impact of this, or identifying the impact of something. You understand? That is what you aim to do. Okay, then the research design and methodology. You have to ensure that the research methodology is coherent and consistent with the research paradigm within which the research is grounded. So there are certain paradigms that are that will speak to qualitative studies. Some will also speak to quantitative studies. That you also have to ensure that the research methodology provides a clear structure of the research and the methods that will be used in the study. It's a very critical section. Why? Because this is where you explain how you are going to answer those questions that you have posed and how you are going to achieve your objective. So your method should be working and be appropriate to answer those research questions, and for you to be able to achieve the aims or objectives of your study. So the research approach or design and method, it must establish the kind of research required to fulfill the objective of the study. The conceptual approach or strategy to the research that will address the research question or hypothesis optimally. Then also, okay, for example, non-empirical, we have theoretical, philosophical, conceptual analysis, content analysis, documentary analysis. Then we have empirical, where you usually do surveys and so on. Remember, there are certain methods that are also used when you are doing a qualitative study, like interviews and so on. Then there's a difference between the two. You have to learn what is it that, how do they differ? How do a quantitative study differ from a qualitative study? You should be able to tell by what you want to do, whether is this a qualitative or it's a quantitative. If you see that now is involved in surveys, then it ceases to be qualitative. It becomes quantitative. Sometimes if you are doing interviews, then you can't call, after doing interviews, then we say that that was a quantitative data. So that is also, they have its own process that is analyzed through coding and so on, then thematic approach and so on, you come up with teams for qualitative, on the qualitative side. So we have to look at that and be able to tell. Some, they use mixed method, a mixture of both. Some, they use case studies. There are quite a number of research approaches that can be followed. Okay, then still under the research approach, design and method, you must establish the research design that will answer the research question or validate or falsify the hypothesis the best. Okay, it doesn't mean if it's a quantitative, within quantitative method as well. There are other methods that are used to analyze, that you have to use to analyze the data and so on. You understand, approaches that you use to analyze the data. So you have to choose the best depending on the qualities of the data that you are having. Usually certain methods, if it's time series data, then there are time series methods. There's a way in which you can determine to say, okay, this is here I'll use maybe simple regression analysis, or here I'm going to use the generalized method of moments, depending on whether it's applicable to that kind of data that you are faced with. There are panel data methods, cross-sectional data method, there's time series data method. So you have to establish what is the best method for analysis. If you use a wrong method, then it means your results that you are going to get, we cannot rely on them because you used a method that is wrong. Then there's also other data characteristics that will dictate what kind of method can be followed. Issues of heterogeneity, multicollinearity, cross-sectional dependence, and some other issues that can affect either panel or time series data or cross-sectional data. So if describe the context of the qualitative research design or the quantitative research design, is the study mainly qualitative, quantitative, or a combination of both? If qualitative design, which qualitative method is applied? For example, case study, grounded theory, phenomenological study, ethnography, and so on. Then if it's a quantitative design, which quantitative method is applied? Experimental method, quasi-experimental, cross-sectional, longitudinal. So you have to learn this kind of methods. Of course, you cannot know all the methods that are available, but you should try to know what is it that applies to the research that you want to do for you to be able to get results that can be relied on. Where applicable, adequate consideration should be given to the validity and reliability issues. Are your study valid? Are your study reliable? If your study is replicated in the same conditions somewhere else, can we achieve the same results? And so all those issues are important. So the population of the study and the sample in these subgroups must be clearly identified and the sampling method clearly described. Remember the population as well. Remember the population, that's the whole. Then you pull a sample from the population. Your sample should be enough to be a representative of that particular population. So there are issues like, for example, qualitative study where you are doing interviews. You must have a certain number of interviews. You have to research on that. What is the number of interviews that are required for the particular study that you are doing, and that the level that you are at? You find that for a thesis, they might require more. They require more interviews than when you are writing on a master's level. Okay, so then they should also, the method of data analysis for the type of data collected must be systematically described to answer the research question or goals or hypothesis posed. So we need to know what method did you follow? Why did you even follow that particular method? Is it the best method? Are there other methods that also are also there? Why are you choosing that method over the other methods that are there? Then data collection techniques or method. So under this one, the methodological approach will determine the data collection techniques that you are going to follow. So if it's a for qualitative study, then you can hold interviews. So you cannot say I'm collecting qualitative data for qualitative study using I'm going to do sort of maybe a survey or that kind of. So okay, so for primary sources, you can use interviews, participatory action, research, field research, focus groups. But this remember, this speaks to both the qualitative, quantitative as well. So you have primary, which means we are gathering the data yourself. So there are issues that also you have to look at: the recruitment of participants, process of obtaining informed consent, data collection, framework, sample size, questionnaire, and all those other issues that you have to address. So that's why we say this. It also involves a process of reading. You must read about this. What is it that is required, and how do you ensure that your research method is clear and concise? Okay, for secondary sources, for example, legislations, journals, internet sources, documentary sources, books, official documents, conference papers, and newspapers. Remember, even these primary sources, it can also become secondary data when you are analyzing data that has been collected already by someone else or another organization or in a particular database. So that will become a secondary data. But if it's secondary data, then you don't have to provide other information relating to maybe the recruitment of participants and so on, informed consent and so on. You don't have to provide that, but you have to provide the source of the data. Which database did you obtain the data from? Who collected the primary data? So under the secondary sources, also information that relate to the data sources is important. The econometric methods of analysis, they are important, or the model. Because remember, within your method, you have to give information about the model that you are going to be estimating. Also, you have to talk about the data and its sources. Then the analytical technique that you are going to follow. How are you going to analyze that data for you to be able to fit that model? Okay. Then from there, you move on to ethical considerations. So there are issues, remember, we have a lot of ethical issues and some policies within the university that governs the ethical conduct of you as researchers. So issues such as the following must be addressed. One, gaining permission to conduct the study at a particular organization. You have to seek for permission. So even if we are going to do research at your relative's company or at your father's company or even at your home, you have to seek consent from the from the participants, and also seek consent for you to be able to undertake research within that particular setting or within that environment. Then ensure that the participation is voluntary and anonymous. In most cases, you would want to protect. Remember, the POPI Act as well comes into play protection of personal information. So you have to, as much as possible, ensure that you protect the information. Protecting information. At one time, I was presenting. I even noted that you, let's say, you want to collect data at an organization, but there's only one person who is old. Maybe within the administration of the faculty, College of Business and Economics, there's only one person who is old. Then when you collect your data, then you present that there's an old person, then you say one. The fact that there's one person who is old, I can be able to identify who that person is, even without writing the name of the particular person. So that those are also other issues that you have to conceal, identity, any information that will relate to affect the confidentiality of the information that you have obtained, or review any information about that is explicit about the participants. So usually that's the way you use those pseudonyms, where you say instead participant A, participant B, participant C, instead of mentioning my name. Okay, then you must identify any potential or existing ethical constraint and propose a solution or strategy. So if there is anything that that, okay, this is there will be this ethical aspect that will arise from the research, you have to be open about it, and to be able to identify, exhaust all ethical concerns and propose solutions of how you're going to address that. So the issue of ethics, I think usually there's an ethics committee within the faculties of the university that you have to deal with this. We have to apply for ethical clearance, both for even if you're using primary or secondary data, but you mostly applicable to primary data. Because for secondary, you usually get a clearance because there's no interactions with humans, with animals, when you're using secondary. But for those where there's interactions with participants, then you have to seek for ethical clearance. Okay, then the research contribution. This is mostly important for those who are undertaking PhD. So we also call it under this is the significant implications or the expected outcomes of the study as well. So we know the contribution is very important. So you have to explain the unique contribution of the study. So usually for PhD, it's a contribution to literature or to theory mostly, but that can be sometimes it differs from one university to another, or maybe from one reviewer to another. Some want a contribution to theories. Some who can say just contribute to literature. So this involves identifying a gap that you are occupied in literature. So remember, novelty is encouraged. You must bring something that is new. And for a PhD, that is very, very important. If that section is not there, then it also means that you cannot have a PhD, because there's nothing that you have added to existing knowledge That is new. And all those additions, like this was done in Europe and I'm doing it now in South Africa, it doesn't apply much to the on at PhD level. Okay, so you have to reiterate what you are hoping to demonstrate, state how your research could contribute to debates in your particular subject area, perhaps filling gaps in existing works. So this is where you're now saying theory X and theory Y have been proposed, but I'm bringing a new theory because these ones, they don't work in an African setting or in South African context. So we want that new theory. We want that new approach for you to be able to do something. So this is the kind of contributions that are expected at PhD level. But for those who are doing masters, you can. I think it's allowed. It's not really mandatory that you should add something to existing knowledge, but it's also good if you can do that. It's good, always good if they are bringing something new. That would be a notch, on it will add a notch on your research. Okay. Then the research plan. So you can also be asked to have a research plan. That's more of a timeline for completing your dissertation or your study. So you have to provide an outline of the schedule and anticipated progress towards completing the dissertation or thesis. This is where you show that in form maybe of a table to show that maybe within the first week I should finish this literature review. In 3 months I should finish my literature review. I should sort more of a timeline. Sometimes they also need even a budget for that. If there's also some financial factors within ingrained within the study that you are doing. You can also be asked to provide such. So a timeline can be presented using different formats such as bullet points, a table, or a Gantt chart. For those who have done project management before, they normally use those Gantt charts. But you can also do them. I think on Excel, you can do a Gantt chart on Excel. Research plan must be realistic. You don't have to set goals that are not realistic. To say, I want to finish the whole study in 1 month, but you know that you cannot finish it in 1 month. Or you have a budget of 2 million, but you know that you're not going to get 2 million for your research. You understand? So you have to be realistic. It should demonstrate awareness of the various elements of the study, such as literature, research, empirical work, writing, financial factors, and also time factors as well. Then the research outline or chapter classification in most cases. So how your whole study is going to be organized. So this is the outline. It outlines the structure of the chapters and provides a summary of the envisaged contents of the chapters. So usually I prefer to provide it in a paragraph form. Section 1, in chapter 1, this is what I'll do. In chapter 1, or in chapter 1, you've done this, but the following chapters will do this. So this is just sort of we can also call it a provisional table of contents for research. So that is just that skeleton that I've been talking about of what elements or what elements are going to be included in your study. So usually a suggested chapter layout. This is generic one. Chapter 1, introduction and background to the study. Chapter 2, literature review. PhD studies can have more than one literature chapter, but even masters, you can have more than one literature chapter, depending on how you classify it. Remember, every chapter it must have a title that is applicable to what you are doing. So some can have maybe a theoretical framework as a chapter, then you have empirical literature as a chapter. Some I've seen others with theoretical framework, then they have another one that they just call literature review. But you can name it the way that you want to name it. Myself, I had a section for theoretical literature, then application literature. You understand? So you can do. It depends on. This is a generic form. We are not obliged to really follow this, but your study should look somehow like this, at least. Then chapter 3, research, design and methodology. Chapter 4, results and findings. Then also results and discussions. Results, findings is the same. So results and discussions. So results and discussions can be put under one chapter, but some I've seen it usually through my role as a research writing consultant at the postgraduate school. I've seen quite a number of studies being brought to me that are having a discussion as a separate chapter. So you can be asked to discuss in a separate chapter. So when you are faced with that, when you present your results, you focus on presenting the result one. When you are presenting, you are simply giving what you got. Okay, you are stating that this is what I got. It was significant, it was insignificant, but you don't go into more of a sort of making now sense of what you have got and triangulating with literature. That now is reserved for the discussion chapter. So when you are discussing now, you are now making sense of what you got. So what a particular variable was significant, and it showed that a 1% increase in that variable results in maybe a 10% increase in the dependent variable. But now you have to make sense of that. Why? Maybe in that particular setting, was it significant? Is there other studies that have also found it significant? If it was insignificant and significant in other studies, why could it be? What could be the reason why it's insignificant in your case and it's significant in other situations or in other circumstances? So that is now the discussion part of the study. Then you conclude and also offer recommendations. And for a PhD, you must also clearly outline the contribution that you have made. So a conclusion, this is usually now we are now summing up the whole study, the whole study that you have done. But remember, this you look at it as you have progressed with the writing process and you have reached the end. You hear now maybe your supervisor is telling you that the introduction is the last chapter to be written, meaning that after you conclude, you go back to the introduction, reconcile your introduction with the conclusion. If you said you are going to Mpumalanga, then you must end in Mpumalanga. If you ended up not in Mpumalanga, you ended up now in Soshanguve or somewhere, you have to state now, you can't say that I'm going to Mpumalanga. Now you say that I'm going to Soshanguve. Otherwise, if you say you're going to Mpumalanga, you have to explain now why did you end up in Soshanguve. So you have to go and see that those objectives that I said in the introduction, those questions that I was asking in the introduction, did I answer all the questions? Did I achieve all the objectives? If there are objectives that you did not end up reaching, or if there are questions that you did not end up answering, then you go back and remove them from your chapter 1. And much of the contents of chapter 1, it will emanate from your proposal. Okay, but some of the information in your proposal, like that part of the theoretical framework, the part of literature, it's moved to the literature review and to the literature review section, for example. Remember, the methodology that you were posing in your proposal, it was just a snapshot of that, just a briefly expressing how you are going to answer the questions, what method are you going to achieve your objectives. But now, in the chapter, in the method, research method chapter, or in the methodology chapter, you are now going in more detail. You are now going in more detail, providing models and so on. How are you going to analyze the data, the nature of the variables, describing those variables and so on? You understand? Okay, so referencing and technical requirements also. Remember, the technical look of your work mostly is prescribed within that structure. I've seen one student who once visited me, and the comments from the supervisor was that she must not change the structure of the proposal that they were given in terms of both font size, line spacing, paragraph spacing. She must bring it back the way that it is, and it was not the text should not be justified. Then you have to follow those requirements. So there are some departments where they are specific. They want you to follow their proposal, but there are others where you can improve the technical look of your work. Because usually we just justify our paragraphs. The text is justified. Usually the reference list, you don't number the reference list. You also don't justify. You have to use the left the left alignment. Okay, So some they will be more specific of what they want. You have to follow that pertaining to the technical look of the web. But also, if you are not given that, then usually when you are there are fonts that the university normally use, Arial and Times New Roman, most of the cases. Arial 12, even if it's Times New Roman 12. Some they use Calibri, but you specifically you'll be told maybe that use this. If you are not told, you can use Arial, you can use Times New Roman. Font size 12, paragraph spacing 12 points, line spacing 1.5. Then you move like that. Justify the text within except in the reference list. That's where you do not justify your text. Then there are other sections that are also included. Table of contents must be there. A list of if there are observation abbreviations that you have used, you provide a list of abbreviations. So usually, if it's in your dissertation, in your document that you are writing, after your title page, you go on to acknowledgements. After acknowledgements, you put your list of abbreviations. From there, you move on to the summary of your study, or some they call it abstract. If you move from there, then you start introduction, going on with the all text until your concluding chapter. Then usually when you are numbering your work, your pages should also be numbered. Title page, no numbering. The other pages before the chapter 1, numbered in Roman numerals. Then from page 1 until conclusion, where you start your introduction, that becomes page 1 of Arabic numerals until you finish your work. So you have to learn how to put section breaks, page breaks. Page breaks to be more specific, because those are the ones that can enable you to say this section should have this number of pages, should have maybe this type of numbering, then these other ones should have this type of numbering. So those are things that you can learn. So your referencing is very important. Remember, that's that form of evidence that I've been talking about, that you have to provide some form of evidence. So we have to citing, showing that any idea that you have used that is not your own, you must cite it. You must give credit to the author, the primary author of that information. Don't give credit to me because I cited someone, because your supervisor said they want a recent sources. Then you find that Monera 2023 cited Smith 1977. Then you cite Monera for an idea that Monera cited Smith. No. Go to the primary source. So don't use secondary source or secondary citations as well as cited in Monera. Smith 1997 is cited in Monera 2023. No, don't use secondary. Go to the primary source. If only the primary source is not available, then you can use secondary. But remember, you have a referencing guide that you use. The UJ have the UJ Harvard, for example, it's available online. That's your hand book that you use for referencing. It will tell you what is it that is needed to be done. Remember, now there are other forms of referencing that were not used to before because of these technological advancements and the 4 era that we are in. We have also other challenges that pertains to the issues of plagiarism and so on. The use of artificial intelligence tools when you are maybe writing. That some that propose like ChatGPT and other AI tools that are there. So now we have WhatsApp, we have Facebook, we have other, but your referencing guide will tell you how to cite or give credit to sources from different platforms. Okay, so you must avoid plagiarism at all costs. Reference list. Provide a list of the core literature sources to be consulted for the purpose of the dissertation, thesis, and the sources used for the purpose of the proposal. Reference list versus bibliograph. So some they will say bibliograph where they are supposed to use the reference list. So we normally do what we call a reference list. The difference between the two is that a bibliograph is more broader. It includes both the reference list and those sources that you consulted but never used within the text itself. So you also include them in the bibliography. The bibliography also includes some bibliographical notes. You can even add notes in the bibliography, but in your reference list, it's only those sources that you have cited that must be in the reference list. So which means your in-text citations should correspond to the reference list, should have a corresponding entry in the reference list. Okay, so you must note the school's technical requirements for source references, referencing style, and the referencing guide. So that's your tool. So for me, if you come to consult, then you say, I cannot, my sources are not, I cannot reference well, or this is some other issue that pertains to in-text citations and the reference list. I see it as some form of ignorance. Why? Because it's clear, the referencing guide is clear on what you need to do. And if you learn how to cite, you'll find that it's about just usually 5-6 types of sources of information that you use. It can be journal articles, but there are journals that you get online, there are journals in printed form, the ways in which you cite that. Then there are books, there's chapters in books, there's information that you take from websites and so on. So you find that at the end of the day, you don't have to consult the referencing guide always, because you would be accustomed and used to the form of referencing that you are supposed to use as prescribed by your department or the school or by the faculty as in reference to the referencing style and guide that you are using. Then the numbering formats as well. The numbering one and not one. So some they will require you that you don't say one the way that it's presented here. They want you to say one in this particular manner. Then you just say one. You don't say one full stop. And you also say 1.1 and not 1.1 full stop. So some they require you to do that. But some departments have no problem with that. Layout. Okay, we have talked about that. So if you're using Arial, 1.5 spacing, 4-point paragraph spacing, but remember, like I said, your department or your school can prescribe to say use this formatting or use this layout. Then you have to do that. Then there's also even a layout in terms of the page, the margins on your page as well. The margins on your page, they can also tell you about that. If your thesis or your final output is going to be maybe published in printed form in the library, then you have to use a certain type, size of margins. Why? Because when that book now is in printed form and binded, if you don't use a correct margins, then your information can also be binded, become part of the binding part of your book. So then, so others, like I said, it will be specifically be prescribed to say use Times New Roman, use Arial, or use Calibri. They can tell you what to do. If you are not, then you can choose amongst those that I've mentioned. So these are headings. The headings have levels. You don't just put a heading. Remember now, because you are writing at a postgraduate level, you section. Sections are important. Some of you have already done masters before. Some you have done. You are now doing PhD. So you know this that you have to section. Section. This is a way in which you communicate to the reader, for the reader to be able to know where the reader is. You are navigating. I must know that I'm in section 1. Section 1 is about this. Then even when you are now making cross references at the end, signposting within your text to say, as mentioned in section 1.1.1, then I can be able to go to section 1.1.1. And these headings as well, they are the ones that will form part of the reference, part of the table of contents. Remember, you have to use those headings, the heading icons within your Microsoft Office or whatever writing software that you are using, for you to be able to insert it in automatic table of contents at the end. Okay, so these are the heading levels. Heading level 1, capital letters, bold. Okay, chapter 1. Then you put the caption of the chapter. 1.1.1 level 2. That is a subheading. Bold, but lowercase. Level 3, 1.1.1, subheadings, still subheadings. That should be just small letters. Okay. Then you have level 4, which should be small letter, italics. So normally you are just encouraged to sort of, it's a suggestion that or recommended to end on level 4. So your chapters, I think by level 4, you should be able to have maybe captured everything within that particular heading. But you can go to 1.1.1.1.1, that's level 5. But level 5 now, there's no any really formatting that you can do. So maybe those ones you can just continue using the formatting of level 4. You see, that's why usually it's encouraged that end there. So your section, a section is a collection of multiple paragraphs. So you don't have a section of one paragraph, then you say it's a section. So a section should have more paragraphs. So sections sometimes try to find a caption that will merge maybe the information is limited into one section. You understand? Also, sections should not be too long. 10 pages of one section. Even if I'm reading, I will even forget that I'm still on this section. So that's why I'm encouraged to put subheadings until level 4 mostly. Remember also, paragraph is not one sentence. It's a multiple sentences. Okay, that will form a paragraph. Your paragraph also should not be too long. The paragraphs of 26 lines. No, it should be at least sort of a rule of thumb, 14 and below. If you are struggling, then you can go to 14. Myself, I normally use 10. 6 to 10, struggling, I go to 12. I don't like going to 14. If I go to 14, then I'm really struggling. But the paragraph spacing the paragraphs should not be very long. And I think you meet such comments as you go along. Also, sentences should not be long as well. Sentences, each paragraph, one idea, then you expand that idea, support it with supporting sentences, then you concluding sentences. Not saying, I'm now concluding this paragraph. No, we know that the last sentence is a concluding sentence. Link to the next paragraph. Link your ideas, relationship amongst the ideas. Link your sections, the relationships among the sections. Link your chapters as well. That will contribute to coherence and logical flow of the text until you finish. Then still under referencing, when listing, please use bullet form and not number paragraphs, only headings. The headings should be numbered, don't number the paragraphs. So don't also do, that is just, it causes confusion. When you were saying your headings and subheadings are using one, these Arabic numerals 1, 2, 3. Then when you want to list something, let's say you want to list your objectives, then you also say 1, 2, 3. That will create a bit of confusion. So either use bullet points or use Roman numerals. Use another form of numbering that you are not using for your headings. So all tables and figures should be numbered and give a heading. So figure 1, then it must have a caption. Then also provide a source of where the source of that particular table. If it's your own, then you can say the author's own table. And if you got it from somewhere, you have to accredit the author of that particular table. Then also, don't take a table from someone or a graph from someone, then you don't credit that particular source. Also, in some cases, you are required to seek for, in fact, you are actually required to seek for permission to reproduce existing tables, existing graphs, or any other pictures that you incorporate within your text. So remember to give credit to the original author from which the table or figure was adapted. References in the text, Monera 2018. So we use an author date system. Mostly that is in fact all, even if you use APA, it's author date system. Harvard, it's author date system. So within text, Monera 2018, if you start according to Monera 2018, normally usually if you start with using the references, then at the end, or Monera et al. 2018, but at the end you put in bracket. It will be Monera, 2018 in bracket, or Monera et al. comma, 2018 et al. It can be usually italicized depending on what your referencing style is prescribing. Then bibliographical particulars must be arranged alphabetically, no numbering, no categories. Don't put categories of books, journals, and so on. You just arrange them alphabetically. Usually, you should not justify them, because if you justify where there are websites, those links to websites, then it will create a lot of spaces within your text. But most importantly, follow the referencing guide. You must also, after writing, check your proposal for the following. Have you shown that your research idea is ethical, relevant, feasible with the time frame and resources available? Don't say you want to do a study that costs 2 million, yet there's no way where you're going to get that 2 million from. Have you identified a clear research gap to focus on, stated why your study is important, selected a method that will enable you to gather the data that you need? Okay, so don't select a method that doesn't work for that, but for the questions that you are posing. If the questions are best answered using qualitative method, then use qualitative method. If it's interviews, then do interviews. So the method should enable you to be able to gather the data that you need for you to be able to answer the questions that you have posed and reach the objectives of your study. So a little bit of some concluding and council remarks. Writing is a process. I've said that it's not an event. You have to plan. Writing is something that you plan, and it's a process that will unfold over a period of time. So if you are doing masters, you are given a prescribed time in which you should finish. PhD also the same. Follow prescribed writing conventions. There are rules that are there when you are writing in terms of issues of grammar, issues of be it spellings. So you have to be able to check your work. You are the one who is writing it. It must make sense for you. If it doesn't make sense for you, then it won't make sense for the reader. So as you write, you also assume an editor role. You also assume a reader role. So sometimes wear the face of a reader. Sometimes also wear the face of an editor of a text. Read. If it's not making sense for you, it won't make sense for everyone. A well-conceptualized research proposal, it guarantees the success of your research. So when they say repeat, you repeat the proposal many times. Okay, so like I said, writing is a process. You don't write the proposal once, then it's refined. You further refine it and refine it. If that process, you appreciate it at the end, because whatever you are going to come up with, it will be something that is, of a better or enhanced quality, that you don't have to do much again at the end. And the chances of success are usually guaranteed. It should be slow but sure. Remember, don't write everything one day. So if you write, sometimes you can even write one paragraph or 2 sentences, you see, but at the end, it's a cumulative process. You'll find that at the end of the day, we are now having 250 pages. Self-academic discipline is important. So I usually say you do not fail, but it doesn't mean that you cannot fail. You can also fail. But instead, you do not finish. Okay, so if you are not disciplined, you won't finish your study. For you to fail, it means you have finished and you have submitted it for assessment. Then you have failed. You could not reach the acceptable standards. But to fail, it means you have finished. So that's why I say you do not fail, but instead, sometimes you do not finish. Okay, so always practice good academic ethical conduct. There are certain ethical standards that we have to maintain, and there's policies that guide the way that we conduct ourselves when we are doing research. There are code of ethics that also governs us as researchers. Plagiarism is an academic fraud and a criminal offense in academic circles. Remember, if you plagiarize, it will follow you. There are many forms of plagiarism. Sometimes you can plagiarize without knowing that you're plagiarizing. Plagiarism is also a subtle process as well. Sometimes, the nature in which you present and the nature in which you cite, at the end, you might end up being credited for something that was not originally your idea. Okay, For example, if you credit me for a source that I also cited, then at the end, someone else is going to perpetually now they are now crediting me for that idea, yet it was not my idea. So there are many forms of plagiarism. You have to learn about the forms of plagiarism. So if you go on Turnitin, I think on their website they have listed quite a number of types of in which a study was done to try to check how really students plagiarize, and there are many ways in which plagiarism can be committed. You must be aware of that, and also try to avoid that at all costs. There are repercussions that also follow. That also goes with that, and also even in career-wise, it can damage your career. It can follow you wherever you go. You will be known as the plagiarizer wherever you go. Then, okay, some of the sources that I just referred to in compiling this presentation for this workshop. Then I open the floor for questions and also contributions. So if there's anything that you want to contribute to this presentation or to this workshop, then you are free to do that. And if there are questions that you want to ask, then I open the platform for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for such an insightful session. We do have some couple of questions on the chat. Firstly, from James, what is bibliometric literature review? Do you have a specific way you review literature bibliometrically at UJ?
Yeah, okay, let me answer that question, because, okay, the bibliometric analysis is actually a method that is used to also just show, usually it shows the extent of research that have been maybe of literature that have maybe looked at a particular phenomenon, but it's a type of a of a of a of a of a paper that you can write. It's a type of a text that you can actually write using that bibliometric analysis. So it's a method that you can use to try to analyze the literature in a particular field or in a particular topic. But usually there are certain things that you do identify. Maybe the number of authors who have looked at that particular topic. It can also look at even the citations, which journals are they publishing in. So it's real people who have done it. The one that I've seen, I think the person who have asked the question can also Google and look for bibliometric papers that have used the bibliometric analysis. Yeah, so that can be done, but it's not really used for one to present literature within your dissertation, your thesis, or within your proposal, but it's normally used to try to just analyze literature that is there within a particular field. It's a method that is used to do that. Then you come up, maybe you write a article, based on that. But we have other forms of literature review that can be done. That also results. Literature has two parts. There's standalone literature. There's also literature review that is comprehensive in form of that is presented in form on its own. That is the standalone that I'm talking about, where we have literature review articles like systematic review, scoping review, and other forms of literature review. I think I've done a presentation on that before. But that was for the department of for the faculty of engineering. So that was standalone literature review. Then there's this literature review that we do within our thesis, mini dissertations. That is the one that I was largely focusing on in this presentation. But we have literature review as a standalone article. Then we also have this bibliometric analysis. It's normally used also to analyze literature on a particular topic or in a particular subject.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. We have another question from Ricky. Please, could you outline common items to include in the research budget for a PhD study? Is there a template available?
Yeah, of course. I think that one, if it depends on the nature of the study that you are doing. It depends on the nature of the study. Templates you can find. Yeah, if you Google, you can even find some other resources that or some examples of templates that you can maybe try to that include certain elements that you can include within that budget. But usually it's dictated by the nature of the study that you are doing, the activities that you are going to undertake within that particular study. That maybe if a financial or a budget, the budget should be allocated towards that. This maybe you are going to collect data, field data. Then there are expenses of traveling, there are expenses maybe that you have to maybe monetary aspects of that you have to pay maybe to people that are going to help you to collect to do the survey and so on. So those are some things that can be included, including maybe if you are going to go to a conference as well, publication of outputs, some journals, you have to pay for publication, article processing charges, and so on. So those are some items that you can include there, but I can say that it depends on the nature of the study that you are doing. But you can find some templates on that. Even if you Google, you can get some templates that relates to that. Even I think if you consult within your department as well, or within the faculty itself, they might have some form of templates that they have that are aimed at that. But that is more of a specific kind of that kind of an approach that should be taken.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel, for that. We don't have any other questions from the chat. If you do have a question, please do raise your hand or just unmute yourself, or just use the chat box to direct your questions to Dr. Gabriel. Okay, we have a hand from Nico. Nico, you can continue.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gabriel. I was just curious as to whether we are going to get these particular slides you were using to present here, because I've seen cases in the previous presentation where we are not able to access the material that was used in the presentation.
Okay, I think Nkosi will be the best to answer that question, because he is the one who deals with these technical aspects of including the organization of these workshops.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Gabriel. Yes, we will share the slides, the presentation slides, as well as the recording, probably in 2 days' time. Once the recording is available, we'll share it to Moodle communities. If you do have a problem or struggling to access them, you are more than welcome to direct an email to us, and we will able to assist you.
All right, thanks, Gozi, for that. Any other questions or contributions before I move on to close the workshop?
For now, no questions on the chat, and there is no hand. Just a quick one, Dr. Gabriel.
Yes.
How long does it take after submitting your proposal and to get a feedback to go ahead with your study, or to get your proposal declined?
Okay.
Or does it depend on your supervisor, how quickly your supervisor is?
I think both on the proposals, usually when you have written your proposal, you submit it, then it's usually also submitted to sort of a faculty committee that will look at that. So that is just simply a panel of experts that will look into that, the feasibility of it and so on. Then they will also make their own recommendations. Then it's returned to you. I think you get feedback on that. the process leading to the allocation of a supervisor for you, because I think also the same panel of experts are the ones who can also tell that maybe this is best suited to be supervised by this maybe member of staff and so on. But the process, this is usually it's a FAQ process. It's a FAQ process. It's a departmental process. But in most cases, there's usually a time period in which you're expected to have completed your proposal, and proposal to have been accepted. It differs also for masters. It also differs for PhD, but this is the communication that is always given to you. If you do not know about that, then you can ask that, request that information or inquire from your faculty, from the faculty or from the department. They will tell you there are specifics in terms of that. By this period, you should have presented. You should have your proposal should be done with or accepted. If you are supposed to present, then you would have presented the proposal before the faculty committee. So there are timelines also that are attached to that, and it's a process that is normally undertaken at faculty or departmental or school level.
Thank you for that clarity, Dr. Gabriel. To our participants, if you do have any other questions, you can just drop a chat or just raise your hand. I'll notify Dr. Gabriel that there is a question.
It seems like there's no any further questions, because I think I just want to thank everyone, for being a good audience. And I hand over to Nkosi to close the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for taking your time and your dedication to facilitate today's session. And to all our participants, thank you as well for making this workshop a possible one. As I've mentioned earlier, that the recording as well as the presentation slide will be shared to your Moodle community just probably in 2 days' time. Once the recording is available, we'll be able to share with you. Also note that there is a feedback evaluation form that we request you to fill out. This helps us to planning more of a workshop like this, and as well as to share your feedback with our facilitators. So in the absence of questions, I thank you all for attending. I thank you, Dr. Gabriel, for facilitating. Have a lovely day further. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.